Hey listeners, before we get into today's podcast, I want to thank today's sponsors, first of which is Pretentious Pickles. Our good friends at Pretentious Pickles, located right here in Plymouth, Massachusetts on 190 Water Street, have a huge variety of pickled items for your consumption. There's pickled beets, Brussels sprouts, carrots, mushrooms, cucumbers, you name it, they've put it in a jar and pickled it. They make a phenomenal product, and for the second year in a row have been won Best Gourmet Shop in the South Shore, Massachusetts area. So congratulations to Lorraine and everyone at Pretentious Pickle Company. And if you can't make it to their store, you can stop by www.pretentiouspickle.com and you can place an order online and they'll ship it right to you. If you're into pickles, you should definitely check that out. And our second sponsor today is HelloFresh. Do you feel like you're stuck in a dinner rut? With HelloFresh, you get fresh, pre-measured ingredients with mouth-watering seasonal recipes delivered right to your door. Skip all those trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. You can now enjoy cooking and get dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less with over 25 recipes to choose from each week. There's something for everyone to enjoy. All recipes are designed and tested by professional chefs and nutritional experts to ensure delicious and simplicity. And I was just over there on their website checking out what they have to offer. And I'm telling you, it's making me super hungry. We have a prosciutto wrapped chicken, which I'm such a sucker for prosciutto. Chicken over garlic parm, which looks delicious. And even a beef tenderloin and brown butter veggies. There's a lot to choose from over there. It looks fantastic. And today they're offering our listeners a discount. You can go to the link in our show notes to get $80 off, including free shipping on HelloFresh, the #1 meal kit. Welcome back, Inebri-ites. This is Andy, the Inebri-art podcast. And if you've been following recent episodes, this gentleman's name came up in, 3 or 4 episodes ago. And I was like, hey, that would be a really good person to see if we can get on. So we have from Terrifier, he plays Art the Clown, David Howard Thornton. Welcome to the show, man.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I was actually talking with, and of course I'm blanking on names because that's what I do. Oh, man.
Same here.
So a recent podcast guest, and he was saying how your Art the Clown, he felt was one of the most terrifying new, horror, I don't know, are they heroes? I mean, franchises?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I wouldn't call him a hero per se, but I guess
I mean, none of them.
Say icon because that just sounds like self. But
right.
But I guess you'd say horror villains, but
But it seems weird, the classics, Mike Myers, Leatherface, Freddy Krueger. It's weird to call them villains because that's what everyone tunes in for. Like, you could care less who else is in the movie. So I feel like it needs a new, and it's definitely not an anti-hero.
Because they're definitely not the heroes. It's just like the new hard dude. I don't know.
Yeah. The new dude. So was it something that you actively campaigned to get? Did you realize that it was going to be as popular as it is? Like, how did that whole thing come about?
Oh gosh, no. I had seen All Hallows Eve before I knew about the auditions.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, that's an awesome role. I would love to have a chance to play that character and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so the auditions came up and I went in, but it was just a low budget movie and everything like that. So I did not expect it to take off the way it has. I was like, okay, when we're doing it, I was like, oh, this is great. I think it's a cool character, but we were trying to be realistic with ourselves, knowing that we were just a small, low budget film, so we're just like, maybe the fans will like it, I hope.
Yeah.
But we didn't expect it just to kaboom like that, especially after we got released on Netflix. It really exploded.
But yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing now with all the streaming platforms. I think it's a lot easier for lower budget films to find an audience. But the thing that I find interesting is I used to, like, way back in the day, used to have a comic book shop, and I would do Comic Cons and horror conventions.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved horror conventions because their fans were so passionate, and that's not like a slight on Comic-Con fans, but it's just like a different mentality. I feel like Comic-Cons, you had collectors who were more interested in like the value of something, and horror fans were like, I don't care, I want that tattooed on my body, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've noticed that myself because I've done both the horror cons and like just the big Comic Cons. And I've noticed there's such a difference between the two, especially with the crowds that come in. Because, I mean, even at the Comic Cons, you still get the horror nerds that come over.
Oh, sure.
And stuff like that. But it's a different camaraderie there, too. It's just like the horror cons, it seems more like a big, huge party. It's like
for sure.
They're all there. Everybody has the same interest. They're all there to have fun. At Comic Cons, it's like, okay, we're coming in just to see these celebrities and buy some items and then going home and stuff like that at the end of the day. And it's just, it's weird. It's hard to describe unless you've actually been there and seen the differences between the two cons and stuff like that.
Now, were you always a horror fan?
No, I wasn't. I was a little bit late to the game, and that was because of my mom, because she was really afraid of horror movies. She oh gosh, she thought like movies like The Fall of the House of Usher, the old Vincent Price version, was one of the scariest movies she had ever seen. So she could not handle slashers.
So has she seen your work?
We didn't watch them in the house.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, she passed away 20 years ago. But I mean, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now instead of teaching in a classroom. Yeah. But yeah, I have a feeling if she was alive now, she would like, I love you, baby, but I cannot watch this. And I'm like, I totally understand, because I have friends that are like that too. They like, I'm proud of you and all that, but I cannot watch horror films, especially with clowns. I have one friend that's especially afraid of clowns, and she's like, so I like to torment her from time to time, just popping up and like on her thread, just pictures of me. It's like, I hate you so much.
I have one of my best friends, and she's afraid of those kind of like long skinny bugs. It's basically like a centipede with like tons of tiny little legs, and just periodically every once in a while I will just text her a picture, and she'll open up the picture, and I'll just get back, you asshole.
we get those things in our apartment from time to time, and I'm like, oh god, these things.
Yeah. So
one of them bit me too. It was really? Like, I did not know those things could bite you, but I was like watching TV a few weeks ago, and I just felt this chomp on my leg, and I'm like, ow. I look down, it's one of those little things crawling away. I'm like, you little shit. I didn't know you could do that.
So you said something about teaching. Were you a teacher prior to getting into film?
I was. I have a degree in elementary education.
Okay, that's a weird jump to horror movies. So
yeah, most people don't expect that.
Yeah, what brought that transition about?
It was primarily the passing of my mom, because I was kind of in a downward spiral in my last year in college doing my internship. Had a lot of stuff happen. Like the last year, my mom died, and then going into my internship, my dog died.
Oof.
My grandmother died. A friend of mine committed suicide, and my sister married a homeless man who's now in prison for molesting kids. And it's just all this happened in like a month's time, and I'm just like, whoa. And I was just majorly depressed and everything like that, and I was making mistakes left and right that I had never made before, because my head was just not in the right place. And I was doing story time with my kids one day, and I was doing all the little voices for the characters, and I discovered I was getting more fulfillment out of entertaining my students than actually teaching them. And I was like, well, this is what I really need to do with my life. I think this is my calling. And and I'd always wanted to be an actor professionally, but I was trying to be realistic,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, well, as a teacher, I can at least, have a stable income.
Right.
It's not a huge income by any means, but at least it's a stable income. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to do this instead, because like my mom's last conversation with me, she kind of imparted probably the best advice I ever got in my life, where she was just like, don't do what you think you have to do with your life. Do what you want to do with your life. You only get one shot at this. You don't want to live with any regrets. So, do what you want to do. And she didn't flat out tell me, don't be a teacher, go into acting. But I talked to my dad after I made this decision. It's like, yeah, that's what she was trying to tell you. We didn't want to tell you what to do with your life. We wanted you to figure it out for yourself. So it's like, oh, cool. That's great.
It's
that's
weird
why
how
I changed.
It's weird how like a passing of a parent, because both my parents have passed, and I feel like after each one, it kind of like made me make a more concerted effort into kind of moving forward with what I wanted to do, like you said, opposed to kind of like because it's that kind of realization of like, hey, we're not here for very long, and why be unhappy?
Exactly. It's just a carpe diem type of thing. And I'm so glad I did that, because I've had so many amazing experiences already in my life, and I feel like I'm just getting started now. It's like, this is stuff I would have never experienced had I just stayed as a elementary school teacher in Alabama.
Yeah. So going from an elementary school teacher to something like a Comic-Con, and someone comes up and knows you for your work and is asking for your autograph, like, what was that surreal? Has it still kind of sunk in?
No, it still has not sunk in yet. It's especially because I get some fans that are just so excited that they're shaking and in tears and everything. I'm like, this is like, it's only me. I'm just me. I'm the nerd that was pushed into lockers back in the day that no one would ever invite to parties and stuff like that. I was the shy kid, and I'm like, it's weird to see people freak out over me. And I'm like, I'm just me. I eat and shit like everybody else. It's like, but but at the same time, it's nice to know that I have that effect on people, where they're just, I've brought some kind of joy to their life in that way, where they get that excited.
And when you started the transition from teacher to actor, did you just cold turkey quit and just be like, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I went in and talked to my professors and the deans of the department. I'm like, guys, I've come to a realization that first of all, I need to take a year off of my life just to get my head back in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a bad place right now. And my professors had noticed that too. They had noticed that, that past year I was really I was a different person.
Yeah.
Because I was basically the ideal teacher in my department.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted me to be the president of the honor society for teachers, all that kind of stuff. I was just like, and they're like, we were actually going to talk to you too. That we think you might need a year to like just get your head back in the game. It's like, yeah, I think I do need to do that. But I'm like, also, I don't think I want to be a teacher anymore. Because I had done theater there at my college as well. I just did it on the side. And so my professors had seen me in productions. They're like, you're really good. It's like, that makes sense. If that's what you want to do, go do it. So it was like, it was one of those very freeing things where I didn't feel like I was really letting people down. And I was afraid that that's what I was going to do. But my professors understood as well. Yeah. I went to a small college, so it was kind of nice because you had that kind of personal relationship with people in your department, as opposed to like a lot of colleges where you're just like one of 500 students in a class. Right. So it's like they all got to know me very well, and they're like, yeah, it's like we think you would be a great addition to the teaching profession. You'd be great for children, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, this is your life to live, and you actually do have talent in that area, so why not? It's like you can. They even said it's like you can always go back into teaching if you want to.
Right.
You can you can get recertified or whatever you need to do if it doesn't pan out, but go ahead and do that.
And see, to me, I always find that it's very common parental advice is to be like, oh, you should pursue your acting, but have a fallback. And I think fallbacks are death, because it gives it, because it is exactly what it is. It's a fallback. It gives you kind of that safety net and takes away some of the immediacy and like need to succeed, because you're like, well,
it does.
That didn't go how I wanted, so I can kind of just go back to my day job.
Yeah. But at the same time, I was like, I just didn't want to go back into the classroom. It was like that was the weirdest thing. I felt like that day there was like this giant burden just lifted off my shoulders. Like, wow, I don't have to do lesson plans. I don't have to sit here and do conferences and blah blah blah, all this stuff. I don't have to sit here and take crap off of parents.
Yeah.
That are so angry that I put their perfect little child in timeout because he threatened another kid with a knife. Yeah, it was just like that kind of stuff. It's like, I don't have to deal with that anymore. This is nice. I can basically be my own boss in a way. It's like, this is.
So what was like the first gig that you got after leaving the teaching?
Waiting tables. Yeah, I did that for 13 years, but that was, but that at the same time I was like, I this is not my profession. Waiting tables is just my job right now to help put food on the table, but this is not my profession. So that was one of the things I was like, I don't take it nearly as seriously as the people that ran the businesses I was working at, where they would get upset with me if I had to ask off work for a few shifts because I had a gig.
Right.
They're like, but this is your job. I'm like, yes, this is my job, but this is not what I moved to New York City for. So my profession will always take, number one priority over waiting tables, because I can always get another job waiting tables if I have to. I can't always get another paying gig that can lead to more paying gigs and bigger things for me. And so that was something I had to like realize even here, because you get comfortable just doing your day-to-day 9-to-5 job waiting tables. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. But you're not going out and doing auditions and trying to further your career. And that's really what helped lead to me getting in Terrifier, because I used to do that where I would just go back. I would do my tour with Grinch, and then I'd come back and just go back into waiting tables for a year, and then go back and do the tour again. And sometimes I'd do small little jobs between. But I was more just focused on, okay, Grinch is my thing I do in the fall, then I come back and wait tables. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't keep doing that. So I took about 4 months off just to focus purely on auditioning. And so every single day I was basically going to auditions and pounding the pavement and really focusing. And I had been up for like 4 or 5 different Broadway tours. And they all fell through for one reason or another. Like one of them literally came down to a coin flip. They couldn't decide between me and the other actor. And I thought I had lost this coin flip because I didn't get cast because of it. But I realized if I had gotten any of those, I would not have been able to either audition for Terrifier or have been able to film Terrifier.
Right.
So at the end of all that, that's when that audition for Terrifier came up, and boom, there you go. And that changed everything. And so I'm so glad I had that realization that I need to focus on my career right now instead of my job.
And that's always one of those hard things, is to kind of take that disappointment in stride. Is like, it's like you said, it seems like you lost the coin flip, but did you? It's
exactly. I actually won that coin flip. It just not the way I expected.
Yeah. So what is it about clowns that freaks the shit out of people? Like, why is it clowns?
I think it's the treading the line of the uncanny valley. because they're human-like, but they're also not human-like, and I think that can be very, very confusing to people because you can tell it's a human being, but the costume, the makeup is all so elaborate, so exaggerated, and I think that all their movements are exaggerated. Everything's exaggerated, everything's amplified, and I think that's what can be so disconcerting to people. And then you have people that have done stuff as clowns, like Gacy.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you have the movies that just compounds onto that fear, I think.
And to me, it's kind of interesting how, like the quote unquote normal clowns at the circus or whatever, like the first thing you do is like push your kid towards them and be like, hey, go get a balloon animal. And the kids are always terrified. It's like, it seems...
I mean, you had Ronald McDonald too. It's like, here, come buy this food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what was your favorite part about filming Terrifier?
Oh gosh. I mean, my favorite scene in that was the pizzeria scene. Because that's also why it was probably my favorite part too. It was just I got to play around so much in that scene. I got to explore all the different facets of the character.
Oh no. Did I lose you? Oh, you're back.
Okay, good. My internet decided to be stupid for a second there, I think.
That's funny. So like I've been having the worst Wi-Fi issues at my office. So I've been recording from home, and this is the second Zoom interview in a row where the other person had issues, and I'm like, oh great, now it's right. Technology.
Oh, you gotta love it. Yeah, it's just like it's like my laptop does this sometimes. I don't know if it's my laptop or just the internet connection too, where it's just so stupid sometimes. It's just like
And I wonder if it's like, since COVID, so many people have been like working from home and putting demands on like just the bandwidth in their normal neighborhood.
Oh yeah. Well, it's when you find out like, how the internet, our internet speeds here in the US are so much worse than they are in like Europe. Like Europe apparently has much better internet.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Is it just because it's smaller?
I don't know. I think I think it has something just to do with like the bandwidth or something like. I don't know. That's all stuff that's out of my my area.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm asking you for Wi-Fi. I mean, no offense, but like you don't have to actors about.
I don't know. Just tell me action.
Yeah.
Now, if you give me the script and it has all that jargon in it, I'll make it sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But here I'm just like, there's something. I don't know. Internet go yay.
I always say, something will be wrong with my car and someone will be like, what happened? I'm like, the magic elf died, I guess. I don't know how it works.
I used to tell people it's the squirrel and the little wheel died and I had to find a new squirrel.
Yeah. So I think we were talking about the pizzeria scene.
Yes, the pizzeria scene. Yeah, that was just my favorite scene because I don't know what all you heard before it went, but I would say that was my favorite scene because my cat just totally nibbled on my foot for some. It's like why kitty, why? It's like I did nothing to you. Oh, I swear this cat's schizo.
I feel like all cats are schizo.
Yeah, it's just like she's just like nuzzling up against my foot for a second there, and then chomp. I'm like, why? It's not soul food. Bad joke.
That's a dad joke. That's a dad joke for sure.
Oh yeah, I am so. Oh God, I'm not a dad yet, but I have so many dad jokes. It's so bad.
My favorite dad joke, and I may have told it on the podcast before, but I'm gonna tell it again. Is there's two wind turbines out in a field. And the first one turns to the second one and says, do you like country music? And the second one says, no, I'm a big metal fan.
I like that.
It's my absolute favorite.
I love them. I love those jokes. Oh, God.
and I do have kids, and they will send me dad jokes. It's great, so they have a
it's
real
wonderful.
appreciation for it. Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm always looking for a pun, so I'm just like I have so much fun because I consider it a good mental challenge just to come up with new puns. Like,
So what was the one we were trying to do the other day? We were trying to come up with a bear pun because we do that type of thing all the time. Where we'd be like, oh, if dogs were artists, like it'd be Paw Casso or something like,
yeah.
And I'm trying to remember now. I think it was like comic bear or something. We were trying to like figure out a bit. Oh no, it might have been an artist bear because we were in an art thing, and like we were literally to the point where we're like, all right, we got to get back to work, but everyone go do what you're doing and come back with a bear pun, and like none of us could like come up with a good one.
Oh, God, I guess you would have to pause for a second to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
back to what we're talking about. Yeah. Pizzeria.
Yeah, the pizzeria scene. But yeah, that's I love doing that scene because you saw every facet of the character, and I got to play around with him a lot. And so you saw his evil side, you saw his just crazy just killer side in it, but you also saw his playful, creepy side. But I did get to improv a lot in that scene, which was a lot of fun for me. And I think that's when Damien and I really discovered each other in that way, is like the relationship we were going to have with each other, because we did that scene very early on in the film. And after that, he was just like, oh, wow, okay, you can just play around with things. So he would do other scenes. It's like, okay, I would do a take that he liked, how he wanted it. And then he's like, okay, Dave, now you just play around with it, see what you can come up with. And that of course led into Terrifier 2 as well. When he was writing the script, because like when he wrote Terrifier 1, he didn't know me.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't know what I was like as an actor. And so for Terrifier 2, he knew that, and he's like, okay, I'm going to write some scenes just around David's style now. And where there are at least 2 scenes in the film where it's just like art plays.
Dave does something creepy.
Yeah, he's just like, he's in this environment and he just plays with what's in the environment. He didn't even really write out what was, because like, those are the things we're just going to discover when we're on set.
Mm-hmm.
And see what's in the surroundings, and then you just play with whatever is in your surrounding. I'm like, that sounds awesome, and that's what we did. And those are some of my favorite scenes that we filmed in part 2, even because I was like, I just get to play and have fun. And we did so many different takes, especially this one scene. I'm like, there are more takes that he doesn't use because he just couldn't put everything in than what he's actually using in the film. It's just like, but I'm like, yeah, we can use those if we do like, an outtake reel or something like that. So we can show people all the different variations that I was doing for this one little bit here, which is a lot of fun.
I feel like that's what actors really enjoy doing, is kind of that play. And I was watching last night on Netflix, they have the Movies That Made Us.
Yes, I just watched the Back to the Future one.
I was watching the Ghostbusters one, and they were talking about how like every time Bill would like come through a door, he'd have a different line, or like when he's playing the keys on the piano, they're like, he just decided to do that, and
that's like just great.
Yeah,
I love that kind of stuff because I think forever it just keeps things fresh,
right?
And I even did that as a stage actor. I would sometimes do that with it just depended on the play or the director or whatever. But I remember this one play I did in college. Every performance for this one entrance, I would come out with a different line. And it was always some kind of joke or something like that. And so that was always so much fun for me. So I would just sit there and I would just come up with new lines all the time. Or I didn't even know what I was going to say until I walked through that door, and then boom. And it's just like, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Did you ever get one that like really killed, and then you're like, shit, what was it? I can't remember what I said.
Yeah. It's like, but those are great moments too, where you're just in the middle of it and something brilliant just comes out and you're like, whoa, that was so cool. I wish I could do that again.
So, I mean, being a kind of, iconic horror character is pretty remarkable, but I mean, are there other things kind of on your actor bucket list that you're kind of like shooting for?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I would say probably the biggest one is, it's my lifelong dream is to play the Joker.
Oh,
And
really?
I've played him on a web series, but that's different. I want to actually play him legit professionally, and do that. And because I love the character so much, he's my favorite villain of all time. I look like him, so I'm like, hey.
He's just the purest villain. He has no
Yeah,
other motivation other than mayhem.
yeah, that's what I love about him, and he's got some of the best monologues too.
So who's your
Just
favorite Joker?
Mark Hamill, easily.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
just like,
Everyone
yeah.
says that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just he totally encapsulates the character, and he does it purely with his voice. But when you see him in the booth too, he's fully in character. You just see him become Joker, and it's just like, oh god, this is great. So like a lot of my Joker is based on his Joker.
Yeah.
I
I was
definitely
always a
take
big
lot
Heath
from him.
Ledger fan. I mean,
Yeah.
it was one of those when he was cast as the Joker. I'm like, that makes no sense. This
Oh, I
pretty
was so
boy.
upset.
Yeah.
I had that same pretty boy. I said the same thing. It's like,
Yeah.
he's a pretty boy. He's not right for Joker. He looks nothing like him. What the heck are you doing casting the guy from Knight's Tale?
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? Then I saw his performance. I'm like, holy shit, I was wrong.
Yeah. The moment he drove that pencil into the guy's head, I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, this is like.
I love that. I love that moment. I was like, oh my god. I actually went back and watched the movie a second time in the theaters because I just enjoyed his performance so much. I just
It's so good. I mean,
yeah,
it's over the
really
top and subtle at
is.
the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he really wasn't the Joker of the comic books because he was kind of like a depressed Joker.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't the big all the time. He was just kind of, okay, well, this is what we're gonna do. But it was just like he had so much gravitas.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you I mean, I remember sitting there. I'm like, okay, it's the scene that he's not in. I'm like, get the next Joker scene.
Yeah, fast forward,
Like,
fast forward.
yeah, Batman, whatever. Get to Joker.
Yeah, and the one that I kind of think most of being comic book like is the old 1960s Batman.
Oh yeah, Romero, of course.
Romero, yeah.
He was the most accurate to the comic book, especially at that time.
Yeah, because I mean that show was, I mean, it was set up to be a live action comic book,
Yeah.
But,
which is you could tell they had so much fun doing it. They were just like, yeah, let's just be crazy. It's just so tongue in cheek, and I love it.
Yeah. So having gone through, worldwide pandemic and hopefully coming out, I don't know where you're located. So I talked to people, some people are still in lockdown. Some people are completely, no restrictions, but like,
yeah.
What have you learned going forward as far as acting? Do you think, auditions are all going to be video now because it seems like that's the way things were done last year? Has productions changed? Like what's the future going to be like?
Yeah, I it's going off of the audition thing. That's, oh god. I think other actors can relate to this, but I absolutely hate self-tape auditions. Absolutely hate them.
Really?
Yeah, because it's like I'm too concerned about what I'm doing when I'm doing it. I'm watching myself instead of just letting whatever happen like I do in the audition room and stuff like that. Because you go back, I will do so many different takes because I'm so nitpicky.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, oh, I hate it. I get too much in my head.
Oh, it's funny because a lot of actors had said they really like it, but I totally understand what you're saying.
I absolutely hate it. Plus, you don't have direction. It's like when you're in, like when I do auditions usually before the pandemic, I'm in there with a casting director, and that's what they're called. They're called casting directors. They give you direction because they know what they want to see. And so if you do a take, you might do a take that they've never seen before, and they're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. But then they also might have, but it might be completely opposite of what they're actually looking for.
Yeah.
And that way they can sit there and say, okay, now I loved what you just did. That's a really cool take, but let's try it this way.
Mhm.
and that will totally change your performance. But then you're able to give them what they want.
Right.
And
Right.
when you're doing these self takes, you don't know exactly what they want, and so you don't get that kind of direction to where they can actually, guide you in a direction that they want, and you can really give them what they want, so they can see what you can truly do.
And they're less likely to reach back out and be like, "Hey, can you try it
Yeah,
this way?"
yeah,
Opposed to just being like,
yeah,
"Meh, nope, next."
yeah. And sometimes I've gotten cast just by the interaction I've had with the casting director in the room, because something happens. Like a perfect example, this is when I went in for my audition for Gotham. I was doing the audition as was, and I choked on a thing of phlegm in my
Yep.
throat, and I just started coughing. And instead of just stopping and like, I'm so sorry, let me restart, I kept going with the scene and just integrated that into the scene and started. It was just this beautiful moment where it's like, because I was talking about, I was dumping Butch Gilzine, Butch Gilzine, Cyrus Gold, that was his other name,
Hmm.
on the show, into Slaughter Swamp, which he becomes Solomon Grundy.
Yeah.
And so it was the whole thing. I'm dumping it. I had just dumped his body in, and I'm like, and so I just made this whole thing. It's like, move over, Butch. I'm about to die too. So I just made this whole routine, and the casting director is laughing her butt off. But I also went from that straight back into the scene,
Right.
and she's like, "That was awesome."
Yeah.
But you also want to do it the real way too, so we actually have the real way on tape too. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, sure, sure. But I know that that's what got me the role.
Right.
That I was able to just do something completely different, and I could show my real ability there to just keep going with the scene and come up with something even better than what was actually written. And I that's the thing. That's when you're in the room with people, you can actually engage with them in that way and have those kind of moments where they get to know you as a person, as opposed to like, okay, hi, my name is David Thornton, and this is blah blah scene. Thank you. It's so impersonal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is something to be said about kind of getting to know the person that you're going to be working with and being like,
Yeah,
okay, they're good and easy to work with. That's got to be
exactly,
a big deal.
exactly. It's such a difference. It's just because I like to have that kind of direction at times, because then I'm like, now I know what you want, so I know what to give you.
Hmm. Nice. Do you have anything coming up project wise that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, of course, Terrifier 2, we finally just wrapped. So Damien's about to have meetings with our original distributors to see what kind of things they can work out there. If that doesn't work, we'll probably try to find another distribution and stuff like that. So who knows? I think anybody would be stupid not to pick this up right now.
I mean, there's so many. I mean, like you said, when it was on Netflix, I mean, you got Netflix, you got things like Shutter. That I mean,
Yeah. I hear through the grapevine that Shutter's very interested right now. So
yeah.
yeah, I can't say how I know that, but is officially on here. But I was like, I know there's some people interested. So it's like, I think anybody would be stupid to pass on this right now, because it's guaranteed moneymaker.
Right.
It's just like,
It's a
yeah,
proven
like
quantity. Yeah, it's not like
yeah,
a
it's got such a huge following. Like, yeah, I understand, like when we had part one come out, because we're this low budget independent film that no one knew about really, except for people that had seen All Hallows Eve. So I understand why it was hard at first, but now it's just like, okay, this is a proven quantity, a commodity. I mean, and so I'm like, yeah. It's
So
just like,
so was the budget significantly larger this time?
compared to what we had in the first one, yeah, because this shocks people all the time. I tell them, because even what they have written online is wrong. But the budget for the first one was only $50,000.
Wow, that is
We made that movie
super
on
low for a movie.
$50,000. It's like, when Damien told me that, I almost crapped my pants. I was laughing for about 5 minutes, because I could not believe that we did that. I'm like, wow. It's just he knows how to use his budget in the right way, and I think sometimes having a smaller budget forces you to be creative with things as well.
That's kind of what I was going to ask. Was there like things that you think were less good because you had a larger budget?
No, because even for part two, we didn't have a huge budget. We didn't even have
Yeah.
$1 million budget for part two. I mean, part two was primarily funded by the fans.
Yeah.
Like the biggest chunk of the movie was funded by the fans. Like, we got like about $200,000 off the Indiegogo campaign. So that really helped us. So, but I mean, even with that, we pulled off amazing things with even that budget, because most low budget films are filmed for at least $1 to $5 million.
Right.
And we didn't even have that. So it's like it's a true testament to the talent of the cast and crew that we have pulled off what we have pulled off. I'm like, there's this one scene especially where I'm like, I cannot believe we did this, especially with our budget. I'm like, this is where a lot of our budget went to, but I'm like, wow, we have all these stunts going on, pyrotechnics, all this kind of stuff. Like, this is, wow, we made a real movie here. This is awesome. But it's just, but we have had those moments where it has forced us to be creative because something goes wrong. Like, there's a scene in the movie, I don't think I'm spoiling much because this is not what we actually filmed. It was filmed where I'm supposed to crash through a window and go after one of my victims. And so we were set to film that, and they were putting the glass in, and it shattered. And we didn't have a backup thing of glass. And we're like, oh, God, this is the big thing we're supposed to film today. What are we going to do? We have to do something. We can't just pause and come back in a few days to film this. What are we going to do? And so Damien and I put our heads together, and and the rest of like the crew, we're all like, okay, what can we do? What can you do? And we're like, okay, well, we'll do this instead. We still have that shattered glass. We'll do this. And we came up with this whole entire scene that you'll see in the movie that wasn't in the script at all.
Yeah.
And we just made it up right there on the spot. And I think it's fucking brilliant. I'm just like, you've never seen anything like this happen in a horror movie before. And it's so much more like something Art would do than him just simply crashing through a window and going after somebody. You've seen that so many times.
Right.
This is a variation on that, and I think it's brilliant. And I think it's even more disturbing in that way because, like, oh God, that's creepy as anything. And it's funny at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's just so in character, and I'm like, it's one of those things like, I'm kind of glad this moment happened because we would never have thought of this scene.
And sometimes I think that the actor gets to know their character so well that, it helps to be like, well, what would your character do? I know there's like a Joss Whedon thing where he's working on Firefly, and he said to Nate Fillion, he goes, say something that Mal would say.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, I'm not going to write it because you're Mal. Mal. You do him. And, of course, the line made the movie because it was exactly what he would say.
And that's how I felt with Art this time around. Because, like, the first film, I was really discovering the character.
Yeah.
It's like, because that's when I first came in, I sat down in the chair with Damien my first day in the makeup when I was doing the makeup test. I'm like, tell me everything about this character. Tell me his background. Tell me why he does this, blah, 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 blah. And Damien's like, I really don't know. I haven't really thought all that kind of stuff out. I'm like, you created him. It's like, I just thought he looked cool, and it was just this. But hey, that's a great thing. Like, let's come up with this together. So that's what we did in part one. But all that was done while we're filming. So we're discovering new things about the character while we're filming. We're developing his personality more while we were filming part one. Part two, I'm like, now I know him. But we're still discovering new things with him in part two as well. He's still evolving as a character, especially after coming back from the dead. So it's like, oh wow, he's discovering still new things about, but there's a new confidence I had with him.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now I understand his core being, what motivates him, why he does what he does, and what that would make him do in certain situations. It's like especially with how he just loves to fuck with people.
So you meant... Oh, sorry. Go on.
Because that's kind of something we added in there when we were doing part one. It was like, it's not just him fucking with people, but how he kind of has a little wink to the audience after he does something really bad.
Yeah.
It's just, that's something we added more into. And it's like, yeah, it's like he does something really bad, but there's also always some kind of punchline with it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the makeup. Like, how is that a part of it you enjoy? Is it just part of like, well, that's what's got to happen? Do you, like,
Yeah,
because it's pretty significant.
Oh yeah. Like when I did part 1, especially when it takes about 3 to 4 hours sometimes to put it on. Depends how much he has to do with the blood and sometimes battle damage. So like when I had my eye gouged out in the first one, and so it's a process, and it's like it's tiring. It can be, especially when you're doing it day after day after day after day. You're like, oh god, here we go again. Because Damien and I are always the first people on set,
right?
So we have to show up in an hour or so before everybody else, just so he can get started on the makeup. So it's like, so at first I was like, oh god, I'm gonna have so many days of this. But after a while, you just get so used to it, and it goes by so much faster. It's just like, and usually Damien and I are just shooting the shit the whole entire time we're doing it. We got music playing, so it's just like, yeah, it goes by really fast. So I've gotten so used to it now. We've gotten it down to a science.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, but it can be a hassle because like, what he like the mask that we've used in part 1 and part 2, we're hoping to change it for part 3 where it's a better mask, but it's like, it's been a gelatin mask. And so it falls apart pretty easily.
Right.
Unfortunately, especially when it has liquids. So my mouth is always falling apart. And so he's always having to like do things like he'll have to cut up like, pieces of bald cap and like glue it to my face and paint over it just to heal my mouth, or he'll just throw more blood on my mouth just to cover up the cracks and everything like that. It's such a pain in the ass. And you've probably seen photos of me from part 2 where I'm walking around, I have 2 like Q-tips sticking out of my nose. I kind of look like a walrus. And I did that just because we're filming a lot in the winter in very cold environments, and it would make my nose run.
Right.
And so I would put those up in my nose to stop my nose from running into my makeup, because it would disintegrate the mask and it would just start falling apart. And, like when you're, having to wear that for like 15 plus hours, you don't want to waste time having to constantly go back and, get touched up again, because that sometimes takes like 45 minutes for him to fix everything.
Yeah.
It's like when you're on a time schedule, you want to do whatever you can to keep, everything going.
So hopefully our listeners remember that, walking around in the cold after 3 hours of makeup with Q-tips up your nose is still better than teaching kids.
Yeah, it is. And I would have to remind myself that too at times, because it's like, God, it's like, 6 o'clock in the morning, you've been going for almost 20 hours. You're just like, oh, this still is better than teaching. It's like, remember what you're doing this for. You're suffering for your art, literally and figuratively right now, but it's going to be worth it. And we would have those moments, because God, we had moments on set, like this one location especially made, I think, everybody in the cast and crew crack at one point.
Yeah.
Where it's just like the exhaustion set in, and it was so cold and miserable. Everybody cracked at one point. And it's like, that's how much that we become a family, because everybody would have their moment. They would just lose their shit for a second or so and have a little hissy fit. And I'm like, and they're like, it's okay. We understand. Like, we're all fucking miserable right now. It's just like, it's okay. No one's really mad at you. It's like,
I'm not going to hold it against you, because I'm going to snap tomorrow.
Yeah. As like, even some people, you would not expect this one person to crack, and they finally cracked. They're like, oh wow, it must be bad because that person cracked, because that person's always lollipops, fun bag. You're like, woo, yay, cheerleader. And they're like, you're like, oh wow, yeah, okay, this place has got everybody. Nice. But that's family for you. They accept it.
So Dave, where can our listeners go to keep in touch and follow what you got going on?
I also forgot to tell you too. There are other things I'm working on too.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Go on.
I'm working on another horror film with a lot of the Terrifier film. It's a Monday morning.
It is
a lot of the Terrifier team. There we go. It's called Stream. And Mike Levy, who was the exterminator in the first one that I decapitated, he's directing it, and like Damien's doing the practical effects for it. But this film's so cool too. I can't tell you what's about necessarily, but we have so many horror alumni in this film.
Oh, cool!
Like big names of the horror industry that are in this film, and they might just have cameos here or there. But it's the whole. Oh my god, it's so cool! It's a cool concept. It's something we're hoping is going to become another franchise as well.
Nice.
And I'm supposed to finally film my last scene later on this month. Or in August, that as we had to delay it because we actually had to build a huge set for this because we couldn't find a location for it. But it's going to be awesome kill scene. So it's enough of a movie where we knew we were doing it right when we're filming in a hotel and this woman comes out and she sees me walking by her room covered in blood and the costume I'm wearing. She comes out. I just want you to know that what you're doing is very effective. We are Second Amendmenters, and you almost got shot.
And you're like, thank you?
Wow. I'm like, thank you. I almost died. Yeah. So it's like, so what we're doing is very effective, apparently. So we have that, and I recently also filmed a sizzle reel. I don't know if you saw it, where it's for Night of the Living Dead 2. And I'm playing this big zombie, a shark bait zombie, and you do not know it's me because I'm wearing a fat suit.
Oh, nice.
And, like, the makeup on this is amazing. It's just so good. And they've got a lot of the original cast from some of the Dead movies to come back for this as well. Cool. So we're hoping we're going to get someone behind it so we can make this a full-fledged movie. So it's exciting. It's very exciting. And I'm also working on a voiceover project for HBO Max for children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
so they haven't seen your other stuff.
Yeah, I do a lot of voiceover work for animation as well for like little ones, which is in that way I still am doing stuff for kids. So it's kind of cool.
Nice.
But whereas you can find me and everything, sorry, I got a little choked up, limped. But you can find me on Facebook and Instagram under David Howard Thornton, and I also have a Cameo page. I think it's David H. Thornton. So if you want me to do a birthday video or whatever, shout out to somebody, you can find me on Cameo. And I don't charge that much on there compared to what a lot of other people charge. Because I'm like, hey, I charge 50. I recently upped it to 50. I'm like, okay, I see everybody else is charged. I'm like, I guess I need to up it some people. So, but I don't want people to go broke.
Right.
Because I see some people charge like over $2,000 on there for a video. I'm like, that's
crazy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I charge basically what I charge for like an autograph at a convention or like a combo for an autograph and a picture. So I'm like, I figure that's fair.
Yeah,
I don't want I don't want to charge more than that. It just seems like not everybody's rich.
You don't want to take advantage of your fans either, you know.
Yeah. You want to be accessible in that way.
Nice. So. Well, for being accessible, thanks for talking to us on a Monday morning.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's a good way to start the day. And
thank you. Thanks for dealing with my internet problems too.
It actually it was far better than the ones I personally have been having. So
that's good.
It wasn't a big deal. But thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and for our listeners, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys again next week.
All right.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or on Instagram at Inebri-art6. You can email us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And make sure you listen to the other podcasts on the Inebri-art Podcast Network, including Bar Talk, Old Colony Cast, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror Podcast, and our newest one, Theme Park Legends, a podcast about working at theme parks. What else? And we'll catch you again next time.